Hello, everyone, and welcome to Teachings of the Ascended Masters on Fallen Angels, Nephilim, and UFOs. I'm Stephen Macchio.
And I'm Joseph Macchio.
And I believe in our last episode, we were concluding with the concluding with the idea of trying to separate out the tares from the wheat.
Yes.
And the period of judgment. And
Yes,
that's where
the
we're going to pick up today is
The-
what is this period of judgment?
Well, this also refers to the harvest. Jesus mentioned in his parable about the tares and the wheat that the harvest is coming and will come. So remember that Jesus stated, "And for judgment I am come. For judgment I am come." So whoever was responsible or condemned or crucified Jesus, they receive the judgment, and that judgment is sealed upon them. So, in Jesus' parable, this harvest, and in terms of our era and our epoch, this period of judgment actually begins with the closing decades of the Piscean Age, which basically ended around 2001 AD, the conclusion of Jesus' mission and the conclusion of the Piscean Age. But the period of the judgment, although it began, let's say right 1975 or even before that, this actually will be going on perhaps even another century until what? Until the fallen angels are gone completely from the earth. In other words, they do not reincarnate any longer. The not reincarnating of the fallen ones and the Asuras, or however you want to call them, the Nephilim, are all part of the same group.
Right.
Flock together. What's that? Birds of a feather flock together.
Right.
All of these so-called evolutions, going back to the rebellion, beginning earnestly in 1975, went through a judgment. And the judgment is these fallen ones are brought to the court of the sacred fire, court on the star Sirius. Now, I know some of this may sound like science fiction, but I tell you, remember the statement, truth is stranger than fiction.
Right.
So anyone who's going through the judgment, in other words, there's no light left. They have completely severed themselves from the I am presence, from the higher self. They're in a state of rebellion and have been for ages. They have taken the dark side ages ago. They have not changed, and therefore there cannot be the sustainment of that identity in immortality. What can only be sustained is the complete merging of the light. A person who is of the light goes back to the light. If there is no light, therefore you're in a black hole. You are a black hole. Basically, you've taken the dark side. You've become a black hole, and therefore, so to speak, and therefore this judgment takes place. So these fallen ones, they do go to the court of the sacred fire. They do go through a trial, and you'll be speaking more about more.
And just for
more
clarification's sake, an age is approximately 2,150 years.
and that's good to say that.
Piscean
Age was actually over, 2,150.
Approximately 2,150 years. You can look that up, Google that, and it usually comes up. They all agree on an age being around that. Now, the other thing, when I was listening to you, I would say, well, why did it take so long for these fallen ones? Because we marked the origin of the fall going back 250 million years. And here we are in 1975. So I just want the people to understand that the momentum of light that the individual has, whether they are of the archangelic realms, or if they are from realms that have more attainment than that. When we were showing the pictures of the chart in the I Am Presence that was delivered through the messengers by the Ascended Masters, there was that rings of light that was known as the causal body. They're different colors, and they surround the divine monad in the center. Now, that light is pure attainment. When someone falls, that's not just yanked away from you. You have that as a momentum of light, and that could take millions upon millions of years to use up. Plus the fact you can steal light from other situations, and we haven't really talked about that.
No, we
might
haven't.
get
But
back.
that's a whole.
We may touch on that when we get a
Modus up.
little further on.
Yeah,
But I just wanted to clarify that why things take so long. It's also any time during that time, there's opportunity for any one of those fallen angels, Archangel Lucifer, Satan himself, to turn around.
That's correct.
They could stop what they're doing and going, okay, we've had enough. I'm done. I can't win this battle.
Right.
I'm going to change my ways. I mean, good luck with that, but it could happen. It hasn't happened, so let's continue.
It's happened in only a few cases, but not with the biggies
Yeah,
that we will be
the ones
discussing.
that originated. So let's continue then. I just wanted to clarify those few points.
I think that's good because
about
although they are cut off from the higher self and the causal body,
Right.
the attainment is within them
Yes.
at some level.
Yes.
I mean, and maybe the cutting off process wasn't immediate.
Right. I mean, they had the ability to pull off incredible things.
Yeah.
Right after the fall, and the time before when they were up with the root races that were already indigenous to this planet.
Yes.
They had tremendous power and authorities, and they would come off as, quote, God's lowercase g,
Yeah.
because of the things they were able to do.
Yeah.
So let's continue with the story now of what happened to some of these fallen ones that were the originators of the fall.
In other words, whatever happened to, not Baby Jane, but whatever happened to Lucifer and Satan and their cohorts. Well, the Ascended Masters have revealed to us that Lucifer went through the final judgment and the, quote, second death in 1975.
Now, this is a very interesting point, because you may be wondering, what was the side of light, the archangels that did not fall? What were they doing all this time? Well, they were acting up to this point in time where Lucifer could finally be taken. And this trial went on for 10 days. He was bound on April 16th, 1975, by the majestic Archangel Michael.
Yes.
And then went through a 10-day trial. Literally very similar to what we have here. It's amazing how there are similarities where the things in the divine world are sometimes emulated to a certain degree.
Yes, that's right.
In process.
Yeah.
And so you had a prosecution, you had a defense, there was all kinds of witnesses brought in. This is all revealed in various books by the Ascended Masters regarding this issue. And ultimately, there were 24 elders who were the judges of the situation. And they came to a unanimous vote that he was guilty, this is Lucifer now, of absolute rebellion.
Yes.
And then he does go through that second death. Maybe you want to explain how that process happens.
Well, the term second death can be found in the book of Revelation. Now I'm going to read that to you because it's Revelation chapter 2, verse 11, Revelation 20, verse 6, and 20, 11 to 15, and Revelation 21, verses 9 and 8. So you can take your Bibles and even in the index look up second death, and they will refer you to these passages in the book of Revelation. The second death is the complete canceling out of the identity of what was once a soul and now has become again, for want of a better illustration, a black hole. There is no light left. As a matter of fact, Lucifer's countenance was wan. He no longer had the great beauty of countenance that he had in the very beginning, but he was wan and thin and worn down. And but nevertheless, that is what the second death is. And anyone who comes to the close of a cycle who has not garnered light to achieve immortality, the soul is canceled out. What is not canceled out is the magnificent I Am Presence, the Holy Christ Self, and that Christ Self merges with the I Am Presence in a state of nirvana. And perhaps in another cycle, another soul will come out from that I Am Presence and be projected out to begin the process of evolution.
But there'll never be another
same-
individual identity
No.
known as Lucifer.
Right.
That is completely gone. That's the important thing here, is because when you do go the other way and you make your ascension, you retain your individual identity. You are Saint Germain.
Yes.
You are El Moria.
Yes.
You are whatever. You are Archangel Michael.
Yes.
Archangel Gabriel. Whatever you are, and
Yeah.
and you retain that, and you just advance yourself as far as you would like to go.
Yeah, and there's no end to that advancement.
Now, what
as we
about the
know.
second guy? There's another guy.
Okay, we got a second guy. So now we have the lieutenant of Lucifer known as Satan, which simply means adversary. He went through the final judgment and the second death in 1982. 1982. So Satan and Lucifer are no more. And you'll find in the book of Revelation that states, well, they were cast into the lake of sacred fire. This lake of sacred fire is a magnificent lake of violet fire on the star Sirius, which of course is another dimension, not in the physical plane of Sirius, but in another dimension. And misqualified energy, fallen ones and so forth, sometimes are placed in that lake of sacred fire and dissolved. So the idea of Lucifer and Satan burning forever in hell is not in the teachings of the Ascended Masters. They do not hold to that. That's orthodox doctrine and dogma, where anybody, not only just the fallen ones, but anybody who supposedly has done all these sins, or mortal or whatever case, now has to go to hell. So the fallen ones fear the lake of fire because it's a place of purification, transmutation, where all their evil is ended and completely transmuted or changed, and the energy is repolarized and goes back to the central sun. So, you want to add anything to that?
Well, I just want to add that there wasn't the tremendous detail regarding the trial on Satan. They just pretty much
Right.
explained it when it came to Lucifer. But I just wanted to say that many of their fallen angels who followed them from the beginning were also brought to
Yes.
judgment. So there's millions of them, because when the fall happened, as we said in previous episodes, it involved the galaxies,
Yes.
specifically Milky Way galaxy and Andromeda. And it was 1/3 of the angels in those galaxies. So this is a great clearing action.
Yes.
And it affects the planetary body. When you remove that much darkness, you create a vacuum, and it has to be filled with light, hopefully. You don't want the vacuum, the emptiness, to be filled with, more darkness. So that these things are planned way ahead of time by the karmic board, ascended beings, cosmic beings, as to when and where these things should take place.
Yes.
It's very, very specific, and that's what's amazing about the Ascended Masters' teachings, is that they're very specific as to how these things happen, and the timing of it, and the cycles have to be exactly correct, so that that balance of light and darkness does not cause some kind of cataclysmic action, because
Right.
you have just taken away this much darkness, but there's not enough light to fill it in, and there's adjustments that have to happen in all the various planes of matter.
Yes. But I also wanted to mention, too, that the karma, and this is a form of the judgment, the karma of mankind is returned in cycles. And that return of karma that Jesus held back, he held back planetary karma through his life and through everything that he did. He held back planetary karma and volunteered to hold back planetary karma that was about to descend upon the planet from 12 previous ages right at the birth or before the birth of Jesus. So Jesus says, I am going to live my life and I'm going to be here on planet Earth and hold back 12 ages, which is actually 25,800 years of karma, and give the people opportunity. So then, when the period of judgment comes, the karma is then returned back to the people for transmutation because they've had 2,000 years of spiritual development, supposedly, to deal with it. And so that is why the violet flame was introduced at an early period in 1930. I don't want to get too much into this right now, but just to let you know that the judgment concerns not only the judgment of the fallen ones, but the return of mankind's karma for balance, for equilibrium, and whatever else you want to
And this
add
is
to
a
that.
very different perspective that you're bringing up, because most people think that, well, the great avatar Jesus came and took care of my sins, quote sins, or my karma.
Yes.
If you, those words are interchangeable.
they're interchangeable.
And therefore, even though I may make mistakes, he did it for me anyway. But in reality, what the Ascended Masters are saying is that it was held back and the karma is returned because only you can undo the karma that you had created,
Exactly.
right?
And
And
this is cosmic law.
yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. You can have intercessories,
Yeah.
like the great avatar Jesus, and the karmic board can sometimes
Mitigate.
do things
They
with,
can mitigate.
yeah. So all is not lost. They're on top of the issue.
They're
And
on
we
top.
have gotten rid of millions of fallen angels, and especially now when their lieutenants and when their main people are taken, that's a huge blow to their ranks. The rank and file
Yes.
fallen angels
Yes.
have issue with that.
Yes.
So you were talking about the Aquarius,
Well,
and that there's a preparation for that age.
It is a preparation, and I mentioned before that this judgment will probably be going on for another, perhaps a century from now, until all of the fallen angels. Now, some of these fallen angels are reincarnating. Not all of them have gone to the second death. Just because they go to a judgment, the ones that go to a judgment will go through the second death. And again, there's always opportunity at the last minute to say, all right, let me do it over again. But sometimes, let me back into embodiment and I'll promise you, but which may or may not happen.
Right.
And sometimes the karma is so great, like Adolf Hitler, if he ever changed and said, well, I think I'd like to go back and see if I can balance the karma. The karma of Hitler was so bad that the suffering that he would go through would be incomprehensible. It would be on the earth for another, who knows, 2 million years, and each embodiment would be extreme suffering or something to that effect. So, and of course, his attitude before the karmic board was completely arrogant and angry and furious. So he did go through the second death, Adolf Hitler, and is no more. But some of these fallen angels will be reincarnating because, you see, mankind, if all the evil was taken away from the planet in one fell swoop, which would actually cause a tremendous cataclysm, as you were saying,
Right.
they wouldn't learn anything. People have to realize, whoa, wait a minute, something's happening here. There are fallen angels on Earth. There's like a power elite. They're making warfare against us in various ways. We've had wars. We've had diseases. Something's up. Something isn't right. What's really happening? You see, this divine vision, this vision has to be, the people have to wake up and say, wait, as I say,
Right.
something is happening. But if the masters take away all of the fallen ones and evil, none of the people of Earth would have any lessons in good and evil. When we say good and evil, we're talking about absolute good and absolute evil, which is the absolute complete distortion of the light.
Right.
I don't want to get into too many side issues here, but just to let you know that
Yeah, but what
every
you're saying
single
is,
day,
yeah.
every single day of the week, certain fallen ones are going to the second death. We're talking about billions and billions
Yes, yeah.
of individualities, that were involved in this, and many of them are not reincarnating. and some are.
Right. And it's important what you're saying, because that's how the light bearer and those who are have the divine spark get mastery. It's mastery in the physical dimension, understanding what's going on, the waking up, because for you to evolve spiritually and ultimately make your ascension, the masters can't do that for you either.
No.
You have to work out, and if you got involved with the fallen angels, which we all did, all of us did.
All of us
you
did.
have to now, that's part of that separation of the tares and the wheat.
Yes.
That you have to now extricate from yourself those momentums that is really a momentum of the fallen angels that you have been around, and it doesn't belong to you. This is the important point. It's not
Good.
always yours.
Right.
It's like people tend to
But
say,
then there's guilt. Oh, I'm
right.
rebellious. I'm this. I'm that. And
Right.
a lot of times,
right, that rebellion
point.
could be because you've been around with them for so long. So basically what I'm saying is, don't beat yourself up.
right?
Don't
no,
beat yourself up all
I
the
won't.
time.
I stopped it.
Back off a little bit and
I'm
realize that. But then
I'm-
again,
I'm
I want
better now.
Oh, good, because I also want to say that you also are vulnerable. You can't just say,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's them," and every time you have an issue, "Oh, it's not me, it's them." You can't do that either.
No.
You have to be able to have a balanced perspective and realize that if you did take on some of that substance, you were vulnerable to it. But ultimately, as long as you have that divine spark, it will always overcome whatever the implants of the fallen ones that you may have. They get undone, and the light always wins out.
It always wins out, and I want to mention that one of the key components of what Stephen is talking about in terms of these propensities is the violet transmuting flame, which you again saw at the bottom figure in the chart, surrounded by the violet flame. So that is the key, and the only key. Spirituality is the only key to defeat our own propensities, our own negative karma in the unconscious, subconscious mind.
Right. And then also, these judgments were also because of the practice of so many of us using the science of the spoken word, whether it is Hindu mantras, which there are many of,
Yes.
also known as bhajans, or just mantras from Hinduism,
Yep.
Buddhist mantras, the prayers of Muslims throughout the world that are devoted to Allah, the prayers of the Christian world, the prayer of a young child. I mean,
Yeah.
anything that has to do with, asking, maybe you're using the term God, you're asking God for help, you're calling to whatever you think you know, wherever you are. This all helped bring these things about.
Yeah. Well, of course, it is the science of the spoken word that this organization actually practices and has been practicing and this was given to us by the Ascended Masters, the science of the spoken word, powerful decrees and invocations for the judgment of the fallen ones. One of these is called the judgment call. But when we talk about the judgment, for many centuries and thousands of years, the light bearers of the earth were not necessarily in any position to literally judge the fallen ones because they had greater attainment. So when this magnificent call and invocation called the judgment call was revealed to us, we understood then that in the name of Jesus and in the name of our own Christ self, this judgment was being called for. The judgment, therefore, of the fallen angels, whose time is up according to the cycles of and the will of God and the cosmic councils. So when this judgment call came out, it was the Christ self of everyone, and is the Christ self of everyone, that is doing the judgment. The human ego, the human self,
Right.
the outer human consciousness with its anger, or perhaps its want to revenge itself, which is one of the most serious situations, because if you start getting angry at the fallen ones, you then have a karmic tie to them. So when we invoke the judgment, it is done in complete love, it is done in complete equilibrium, it is done from the heart, And it is the Christ self, for judgment I am come. It is the I am presence and the Christ self executing this judgment. I just wanted to make that
Yeah,
clear.
yeah. And it doesn't matter whether you, I mean, that's an excellent explanation, because maybe towards the end of our episodes, we will talk about that in more detail, about that judgment call. But any light that's given from anyone, like I was saying before, it can be used by the ascended beings, and that light can be used for the judgment against various levels of fallen angels
Yes.
and the minions. And we're going to be getting on with others that have come to this planet to wreak havoc. There's always someone coming here. So we're going
But
to...
why are we letting them in?
Well, we're going to get to that
Oh,
very
I'm going to
soon
get
here.
to that.
So
Okay, 'cause I want to know.
in the next episode, we're going to be talking about the notorious Genesis 6 of the Bible. And so for now, I think we'll end here for this episode. In next episode, we will be talking about Genesis 6 and the sons of God and the daughters of men.
Whoa.
So thank you for watching this
Thank you.
episode